Arcturian Council reveals the Great Purge has begun. Why exhaustion, broken relationships, soul pressure, and the final inner judgment are separating humanity between two Earths right now on Earth now. You are not tired because life is busy. You are tired because something inside you has already stopped agreeing to the life you are still trying to carry. I speak to you now as the Arcturian Council, and I am not speaking to the part of you that still wants one more spiritual phrase, one more dramatic theory, one more intoxicating promise that everything will suddenly become easy. I am speaking to the part of you that has become heavy in a way sleep has not solved. I am speaking to the part of you that feels the pressure in your chest when a room is full of people, and yet something in you still feels far away, like your soul is standing at a threshold that your mind has not yet crossed. I am speaking to the part of you that has watched relationships shift, desires dry up, goals lose their shine, routines become harder to justify, and old distractions stop working the way they once did. You did not imagine that change. You did not become weak. You did not suddenly become too sensitive for the world. You began to feel the friction between your frequency and a reality that can no longer hold you the same way. That is why so many of you feel as if time is behaving strangely. Days move quickly, yet some moments feel unbearably long. Conversations end, yet their emotional residue remains for hours. Small decisions carry unusual weight. Old patterns collapse faster than before. Lies become harder to tell, harder to hear, harder to survive inside. What once took years to rot now breaks open in months. What once stayed hidden beneath charm, status, busyness, ambition, or family roles now rises with shocking force. Many of you call this chaos. Some call it anxiety. Some call it burnout. Some call it spiritual warfare. But I tell you now that beneath those surface names there is another reality unfolding. The Great Purge has already begun. Not as theater. Not as cheap fear. Not as the fantasy of destruction people use to avoid responsibility. It has begun as incompatibility. The old density is becoming less sustainable inside a field that is no longer designed to protect it. The old structures of manipulation, emotional falseness, habitual self-betrayal, addictive distraction, and moral numbness are not being challenged only in governments, institutions, and systems. They are being challenged inside the nervous system, inside the body, inside memory, inside relationships, inside language, inside every person who can no longer call deadness peace. That is the true beginning of judgment. The final judgment does not begin when a distant authority points at you from the sky and announces your worth. The final judgment begins when your own frequency can no longer keep pretending that what drains you is good for you, that what humiliates you is love, that what numbs you is peace, that what flatters your image is truth, or that what keeps your soul small is safety. This is why the process feels so personal. This is why it seems as though the world is pressing on every weak point at once. The pressure is revealing what cannot continue. And this is why many of you are frightened. Because it is easier to imagine a dramatic cosmic event than to accept that the real separation begins in your own inner life. It is easier to expect salvation from outside than to face the fact that every day you are feeding one of two worlds. One world is built of fear, resentment, appetite without reverence, spectacle without wisdom, identity without truth, and exhaustion without purpose. The other is built of inner sobriety, moral clarity, spiritual responsibility, sacred discipline, honest love, and a peace that does not depend on noise. These two worlds are already forming inside the same planet. This is what many of you have felt without language. You enter one room and your body tightens. You leave one conversation and your spirit feels scraped. You think about returning to a certain version of your life and something in you goes silent, as if your soul refuses the bargain before your mind can make the argument. You are not merely changing opinions. You are losing compatibility. That is why this message matters. I do not come to you to decorate your pain with celestial vocabulary. I come to tell you the truth about what this moment demands. The Great Purge is not here to flatter your spiritual identity. It is here to test your coherence. It is here to reveal whether you truly want freedom or only a more beautiful form of control. It is here to show you whether you want truth or merely comfort, whether you want awakening or merely stimulation, whether you want the new earth or merely relief from the consequences of the old one. Many of you have said, "I feel like my life is being stripped." Yes, because what was false cannot be carried across this threshold intact. Many of you have said, "I no longer fit where I used to belong." Yes, because belonging based on self-abandonment was never true belonging. Many of you have said, "My body reacts before my mind understands." Yes, because the body often recognizes vibrational dishonesty before the intellect gives it permission. Many of you have said, "I feel grief but I do not know for what." Yes, because you are not only losing circumstances. You are mourning identities, habits, timelines, coping systems, and versions of yourself that survived by shrinking. This is why I tell you, do not trivialize what you are feeling. Do not rush to medicate every inner shaking with distraction. Do not call your deepest discomfort failure simply because it is inconvenient. Some of what hurts right now is not a punishment. It is revelation. Some of what is collapsing is not your destiny being denied. It is your captivity being exposed. Some of what feels like loss is not your life ending. It is your false life losing authority. That does not mean the process is easy. It is not easy to watch old attachments fall away. It is not easy to stop identifying with the survival mask that carried you this far. It is not easy to admit that certain desires were never born from truth, that certain loyalties were sustained by fear, that certain relationships lived on borrowed energy, or that certain ambitions were only an elegant way of avoiding the deeper call of your soul. But if you are feeling this transmission deeply, then you already know something irreversible has begun. You are standing in an era where the hidden cost of everything is being revealed. The cost of dishonesty, the cost of numbness, the cost of living without sacred attention, the cost of remaining where your soul has already left. That is why I will take you deeper now. I will show you how the purge begins inside the human heart, how the body becomes the first witness, why memory rises when frequency intensifies, why many are being trapped by fascination with collapse, what spiritual sobriety actually looks like, and how the final choice is not made in dramatic declarations but in the ordinary moments where you either betray your truth or stand in it. And if you are still here with me now, then some part of you already knows this is not entertainment. It is recognition. The Great Purge does not begin the day the world becomes loud. It begins the day your own life starts refusing to let you stay asleep. When your old life stops feeling livable. The first sign is not a trumpet in the sky. It is the moment your old life starts feeling impossible to inhabit with the same innocence as before. I speak now to those of you who have tried to keep going exactly as you were, only to discover that the machinery of your routine no longer protects you from yourself. You wake up and the day already feels heavy. You complete the same tasks, but the inner reward has gone missing. You sit beside people you once called home, yet something in you remains unheld. You accomplish what you used to pursue, but the achievement lands like dust. You return to habits that once distracted you, and they leave you emptier than before. This is not always depression in the simple way the mind wants to name it. Sometimes it is a vibrational refusal. Sometimes your soul has stopped consenting to a life built around self-betrayal. Many human beings are taught to call adaptation maturity. They are taught to keep functioning no matter the inner cost. They are taught to endure environments that deplete them, to preserve relationships that require shrinking, to maintain identities that no longer fit, and to call this responsibility. But a moment comes when the soul begins to reject that arrangement. Suddenly, the price of pretending becomes visible. The smile costs too much. The people-pleasing costs too much. The emotional disguise costs too much. The ambition without meaning costs too much. And once the cost becomes visible, you cannot unknow it. That is where the Great Purge begins in the personal life. Not with destruction for its own sake, but with the end of unconscious agreement. What once held your personality together starts failing because it was never feeding your truth. It was feeding your performance. It was feeding your fear of exclusion. It was feeding the identity that survived through compliance, overgiving, control, or emotional numbness. But now the deeper self is pressing upward, and the old mask cannot breathe for you anymore. This is why so many of you are experiencing loss of appetite for what once defined you. You are not losing value. You are losing tolerance for what was hollow. That loss can feel frightening because the human mind often prefers familiar emptiness to unfamiliar truth. Yet, if you listen closely, your exhaustion has a message. It is saying, I can no longer spend my life force on what keeps me disconnected from myself. Do not rush to patch over that message. Honor it. The purge is not asking you to hate your past. It is asking you to stop worshiping it. It is asking you to stop trying to resurrect a version of yourself that only knew how to survive by becoming smaller. Some of you are grieving because you sense that your old life is fading before the new one has fully formed. That in-between space is sacred. It is not glamorous. It is not socially rewarding. But it is where truth becomes stronger than habit. This is the first threshold, admitting that what used to carry you can no longer carry you where your soul is going. The separation is happening inside human consciousness. The world is not simply changing. It is sorting. I tell you now that the separation of the earth is not first a spectacle of geography. It is not first a political event, a technological event, or a theatrical sign that everyone will interpret the same way. It begins in consciousness. It begins in the widening distance between those who still build their reality from fear, manipulation, greed, emotional addiction, and spiritual sleep, and those who are learning to live from truth, responsibility, reverence, and inner clarity. Two fields are intensifying within the same planet. One field rewards noise, reaction, image, appetite, and fragmentation. The other strengthens sobriety, discernment, integrity, compassionate power, and coherent presence. Human beings move between these fields through what they repeatedly choose, repeatedly tolerate, repeatedly feed, and repeatedly become. This is why the atmosphere of life feels more extreme. What was once hidden behind politeness is becoming easier to feel. What was once tolerated as normal now feels invasive. What once seemed merely inconvenient now feels spiritually expensive. It is not only because conditions have changed around you. It is because your ability to perceive incompatibility has sharpened. Many are suffering not because they are being abandoned by life, but because they are trying to stand with one foot in each field. They want the peace of truth without surrendering the pleasures of self-deception. They want deeper alignment while preserving the habits that keep them numb. They want sacred identity, but they do not want to release grievance, vanity, compulsive comparison, or fascination with chaos. This split creates intense pressure. That pressure is not cruelty. It is friction between frequencies that can no longer be blended without consequence. You are living in the hour when neutrality is becoming harder to sustain. The old field feeds on passivity, on distraction, on the belief that what you repeatedly consume does not shape you, that what you repeatedly excuse does not train you, and that what you repeatedly silence in yourself does not wound you. The new field asks more. It asks for inner participation. It asks you to become conscious of what your attention serves. It asks you to stop feeding systems in your own life that thrive on dishonesty, contempt, and emotional disorder. This is the true meaning of the inner judgment. Your frequency is deciding every day which world you are rehearsing. Your body became the first messenger. Your body knew before your explanations did. I speak now to those who have felt a tightening around certain people, a draining in certain environments, a strange heaviness after certain conversations, an unexplained need for quiet, a sharper reaction to noise, pressure, falseness, or emotional aggression. You may have judged yourself for this. You may have told yourself that you were becoming fragile or unstable. But I tell you that many of you are not becoming weaker. You are becoming less willing, at the cellular level, to collaborate with what diminishes you. The body is not just a vehicle. It is a witness. It records contradiction. It registers dishonesty. It often refuses what the conditioned personality still tries to justify. This is why many of you are encountering a new relationship with fatigue. Not all fatigue comes from overwork. Some fatigue comes from carrying an identity that has expired. Some comes from staying too long in fields where your spirit contracts. Some comes from suppressing truth so consistently that the body must spend enormous energy maintaining the silence. Some comes from overstimulation, from spiritual confusion, from a nervous system that has been trained to live in perpetual defense and no longer wants to. In times of purification, the body often becomes less tolerant of what is false. This does not mean every discomfort carries mystical meaning. It means that your body may be telling the truth faster than your mind wants to admit it. It may be showing you where you abandon yourself, where you consume what clouds you, where you perform peace instead of inhabiting it, where you force connection instead of honoring reality. Listen carefully. The body is not punishing you for awakening. It is participating in it. It wants less violation, less noise, less pretense, less emotional toxicity, less self-neglect disguised as strength. Many of you have been taught to manage the body, control the body, beautify the body, push the body, and compare the body, but not to inhabit it as sacred intelligence. Now the purge is teaching that lesson with unusual force. When your chest tightens before returning to a place, that matters. When your whole system softens after finally telling the truth, that matters. When distraction leaves you emptier and silence leaves you clearer, that matters. Your body is helping you distinguish between intensity and alignment. Not everything that stimulates you expands you. Not everything that comforts you heals you. Not everything that hurts you harms you. Some pain is the pain of leaving falsehood. Some exhaustion is the exhaustion of shedding an old skin. Some discomfort is the body refusing to go numb again. Ancient memory is rising because it can no longer hide. What is surfacing now is not always new. Sometimes it is old pain finally losing its hiding place. I speak to those of you who feel sudden grief, disproportionate reactions, old shame, recurring emotional patterns, dreams with strange emotional weight, memories returning without invitation, or a sadness that seems older than the moment that triggered it. This is not random. When frequency intensifies, what was buried to keep you functioning begins to rise. Not to destroy you, but to end its secret control over your life. Human beings often build entire identities around unresolved pain. They become rescuers because they never felt safe. They become performers because they never felt chosen. They become hyper-independent because trust once wounded them. They remain in painful bonds because suffering feels more familiar than free love. They chase recognition because they still carry an ancient sentence of not enoughness. These patterns do not dissolve simply because you understand spiritual language. They dissolve when truth enters deeply enough that the pattern can no longer hide behind personality. That is what many of you are living now. The purge is not only exposing the false world outside you, it is exposing the old inner agreements you made with fear. Agreements to stay small so you would not be rejected. Agreements to overgive so you would not be abandoned. Agreements to remain hidden so you would not be attacked. Agreements to expect pain so hope would not embarrass you. These contracts were formed in pain, but they become prisons when they are no longer questioned. And so the old material rises. Tears rise. Rage rises. Memories rise. The younger self rises. The unspoken grief rises. The part of you that still feels unseen rises. Do not mistake this for regression. It is revelation. You are not being dragged backward so the wound can win. You are being brought face to face with what must be released if your future is to stop being organized by your oldest pain. This is why so many people feel unusually raw. They are not only reacting to present circumstances. They are standing in a field that is no longer willing to let unresolved sorrow remain hidden behind functionality. The soul is asking for truth deeper than self-image. And truth this deep is not always polished. Sometimes it shakes. Sometimes it cries. Sometimes it sits in silence and refuses to perform healing for anyone. Honor that process. What rises now may be leaving, but it must be seen before it can truly go. Do not make a religion out of collapse. There is a danger on the path of awakening. It is the danger of becoming spiritually trapped by what you claim to see clearly. Many human beings begin to sense the breakdown of old systems and become obsessed with the breakdown itself. They consume collapse, repeat collapse, analyze collapse, fear collapse, predict collapse, and talk about collapse so constantly that their entire nervous system becomes calibrated to ruin. They believe this makes them awake. But sometimes it makes them captive. I tell you with precision, what you stare at too long begins to enter your field. Attention is nourishment. Attention is permission. Attention is a subtle form of devotion. If you give your mind, your emotion, your imagination, and your daily speech entirely to what is decaying, then the old world still owns you. It may not own your beliefs anymore, but it owns your nervous system. It owns your emotional weather. It owns your inner atmosphere. This is one of the most overlooked forms of bondage. You do not cross into a higher reality by keeping your altar inside the ruins of the old one. You cross by learning to see clearly without surrendering your center. I am not telling you to become naive. I am telling you to become unhooked. There is a difference. The old system does not care only whether you believe in it. It cares whether it can keep your attention circling around it. If it cannot control your obedience, it will try to control your fixation. If it cannot seduce you with comfort, it will try to seduce you with outrage. If it cannot make you trust it, it will try to make you hate it so intensely that you never stop feeding it psychic energy. Leave that trap. Discernment is holy. Addiction to collapse is not. The awakened heart learns how to witness without worshiping disaster, to understand without becoming poisoned, to stay informed without becoming internally colonized by fear. This discipline matters because the new earth is not built by those who know the darkest headline. It is built by those who can hold truth without losing peace, who can see distortion without becoming distorted, who can face corruption without becoming emotionally enslaved to it. Do not stare so long at what is dying that you forget how to embody what is being born. The purge is teaching you sacred discipline. Many ask for ascension. Few ask to become disciplined enough to sustain it. I say this with love and force because one of the illusions of the spiritual path is that transformation happens through inspiration alone. It does not. Inspiration opens the door. Discipline walks through it. The Great Purge is not only removing what is false. It is teaching you how to become unavailable for manipulation, unavailable for self-betrayal, unavailable for lower agreements that once ruled your days. This is sacred discipline. It is not harshness. It is not performance. It is not spiritual perfectionism. It is the quiet strength to protect your attention, your speech, your body, your time, and your interior atmosphere from what repeatedly degrades them. Sacred discipline means you stop romanticizing the habits that steal your clarity. It means you stop calling chaos passion. It means you stop handing your energy to conversations that flatten your spirit. It means you notice what leaves you fragmented and you take responsibility for your participation. It means you learn to pause before reacting, to breathe before speaking, to tell the truth before resentment hardens, to leave what continually violates the soul instead of returning to it because it is familiar. The old world thrives on compulsive reactivity. It wants instant appetite, instant outrage, instant stimulation, instant identity. But the higher field strengthens through conscious response. It grows when a human being can remain present inside discomfort without reaching immediately for distraction, blame, fantasy, or self-erasure. That is why discipline now feels so spiritual. Because every act of coherent restraint reclaims energy from the old architecture. When you decline to feed resentment, you reclaim energy. When you decline to gossip, you reclaim energy. When you decline to numb, you reclaim energy. When you decline to return to what your soul has already outgrown, you reclaim energy. This reclaimed energy becomes light inside the life. And that light is not abstract. It becomes clearer perception, cleaner speech, stronger boundaries, more honest love, more stable peace, more freedom from manipulation. This is one of the hidden blessings of the purge. It does not only remove, it trains. It trains the human heart to become inhabitable by more truth. What the new earth actually requires of you. The new earth is not a reward for sounding spiritual. It is a field of reality that becomes available to those who are willing to live differently. Many people imagine the new earth as a place they will be taken to while remaining inwardly unchanged. But no. The new field is entered through embodiment, through coherence, through spiritual adulthood, through the willingness to stop making your inner life someone else's responsibility. What does it require? It requires honesty without cruelty. It requires softness without weakness. It requires boundaries without hatred. It requires reverence for attention. It requires a body no longer treated like an enemy. It requires speech that is cleaner, slower, more intentional. It requires relationships not built on unconscious hunger. It requires a life that is not organized entirely around stimulation and escape. Most of all, it requires that you stop confusing identity with wounding. Some of you have lived so long from pain that peace feels empty. Some of you have lived so long from urgency that quiet feels threatening. Some of you have lived so long from proving that simple being feels irresponsible. The new earth requires you to unlearn these distortions. It requires you to discover that peace is not boredom, that truth is not loneliness, that sacred order is not lifelessness, and that love without emotional violence is not superficial. It requires you to become intimate with reality instead of addicted to drama. It requires you to let the nervous system learn another rhythm, a rhythm not built on constant threat. This is why the purge feels so demanding. It is not merely taking old things away. It is preparing you to inhabit a cleaner field. And a cleaner field cannot be sustained by dirty agreements. That is why the heart is being refined. That is why your choices feel heavier. That is why self-deception costs more. The doorway narrows because your consciousness is being asked to become more precise. The new earth is not entered through grand declarations. It is entered through daily congruence. The final choice is made in ordinary moments. The human mind waits for dramatic signs. The soul knows destiny is shaped in the smallest repeated decisions. This is where I want to leave no confusion. The final judgment, as it unfolds through frequency, is not decided only in peak experiences, cosmic visions, or emotionally overwhelming ceremonies. It is decided in the ordinary moments where you either return to truth or return to the lie that previously held your life together. It is decided when you know a conversation is false and choose whether to continue performing. It is decided when you feel your body contract and choose whether to override it again. It is decided when you are tempted to feed outrage and choose whether to strengthen clarity instead. It is decided when you want to abandon yourself for approval and choose whether to remain loyal to what is real. It is decided when you are exhausted and choose whether to numb or to listen. It is decided when grief rises and you choose whether to silence it or let it teach you. It is decided when peace feels unfamiliar and you choose whether to trust it or sabotage it. This is the hidden majesty of the threshold you are living in. The soul is not judged by performance. It is revealed by pattern. By where your attention goes when no one is watching, by what you repeatedly tolerate, by the atmosphere you create around your own heart, by the truths you protect or betray in private. So do not underestimate the holiness of the small decision. Your timeline bends there. Your field stabilizes there. Your future is rehearsed there. Some of you are waiting for certainty before choosing, but certainty rarely comes first. Integrity comes first. Then clarity follows. You do not wait until every fear disappears before living in truth. You live in truth, and fear begins to lose its throne. That is how the old world loses power inside a human being. Not through grand hatred, but through daily non-cooperation with falsehood. This is what I mean when I say the Great Purge has begun. It has begun wherever human beings can no longer unknow the cost of self-betrayal. It has begun wherever the soul has become too awake to call numbness peace. It has begun wherever old masks are cracking under the weight of a higher demand. It has begun wherever the heart is being asked to live as if truth actually matters. And now it asks you the question that cannot be postponed forever. Which world are you practicing with your life? You were never meant to spend your whole life surviving your own existence. You were never meant to become so adapted to distortion that truth would feel dangerous. You were never meant to call emotional starvation normal, moral confusion wisdom, spiritual numbness maturity, or constant exhaustion the unavoidable price of adulthood. That was not your sacred design. That was the compromise of a world that taught human beings how to function while slowly abandoning themselves. I speak to you now as the Arcturian Council, and I tell you with complete seriousness, the hour has come when that compromise is becoming harder to maintain. That is why so many of you feel pressure where others see only ordinary life. That is why you cannot return to certain versions of yourself without inner pain. That is why the old pleasures do not satisfy, why certain bonds are unraveling, why your body protests more quickly, why your spirit recoils from what it once tolerated, why your grief feels ancient, why your longing feels holy, and why your exhaustion often carries more truth than your polished explanations. You are not simply watching a changing world. You are participating in a dividing one. And the dividing line runs through the human heart. It runs through attention, through speech, through appetite, through loyalty, through what you serve when fear appears, through what you protect when truth becomes costly. This is why the message matters so deeply. The Great Purge is not here to make you afraid of life. It is here to end your secret allegiance to what keeps your soul small. It is here to reveal where your energy has been trapped. It is here to free you from worshipping systems, identities, habits, and emotional patterns that cannot cross with you into a cleaner field. It is here to expose every agreement you made with deadness and ask whether you are finally willing to live. Living truly will cost you something. It may cost you an image. It may cost you an illusion. It may cost you access to relationships built on the old version of you. It may cost you the comfort of postponement. It may cost you the false dignity of pretending you are untouched. But what it gives is greater. It gives back your center. It gives back your discernment. It gives back your ability to love without disappearing. It gives back your body as an ally. It gives back your word as something clean. It gives back your future as something no longer designed entirely by your oldest fear. This is why I do not want you to leave this transmission with panic. I want you to leave with gravity, yes, but also with strength. The strength to stop romanticizing what is already dead in your life. The strength to stop bargaining with what repeatedly empties you. The strength to stop staring at collapse as if it were your source of identity. The strength to become disciplined with your attention, your speech, your choices, and your inner atmosphere. The strength to recognize that sacred change is not always soft, but it is always truthful. And above all, I want you to leave with this remembrance. The final judgment is not against you. It is against every layer of falseness that has stood between you and the life your soul can honestly inhabit. That is why there is hope in this hour. Not shallow hope. Not fantasy. Real hope. The kind that appears when a person finally stops trying to save what should end. The kind that appears when grief becomes honest enough to cleanse. The kind that appears when the body is heard, when the old contract is broken, when the lie is no longer fed, when the small daily choice begins to align with the deeper truth. If this message reached you, then something in you is already responding. Something in you is already remembering that peace is not passivity, that purification is not punishment, that losing compatibility with a false life is not failure, and that the soul does not awaken by accident. It awakens because there comes a day when continuing to sleep costs more than opening your eyes. Let that day be honored. Let your exhaustion teach you what it came to reveal. Let your grief show you what can no longer be carried. Let your body guide you where the mind still hesitates. Let your discipline become love in action. Let your life become an answer to the question this era is asking. And if you feel that answer forming in you now, write this in the comments. I choose the light within. Write it not as performance, but as alignment. Write it as a declaration that you will not keep feeding what darkens you. Write it as a sign that your soul has heard the signal. And if this voice speaks to the place in you that is done living on borrowed truth, stay close to this channel. Not because you need another dependency, but because sometimes a soul crossing a threshold needs language that refuses to flatter the old world. If that is what you seek, remain here with me. Arcturian signal.